Welcome to EDL 632, Finance and Higher Education, Module 5, Let's Make a Deal, Tuition Policies, Fees, and Discounts. The readings for Module 5 are Why Does College Cost So Much? Tuition Discounting for Revenue Management, Tuition-Rich, Mission-Poor, Non-Resident Enrollment Growth, and the Socioeconomic and Racial Composition of Public Research Universities, and Course Load, the Growing Burden of College Fees. First, before I begin, I'd like to apologize. I had a Prezi that I had done a recording with Screencast-O-Matic on, but unfortunately I ran into some technical difficulties and was unable to upload the video, so you get me instead. But I will put the Prezi on in addition to this video on Blackboard for everybody to view. So the first topic I'd like to talk about is government subsidies. Subsidies, government and private. Over the last 30 years, they have been declining due to a shift in budget priorities and other economic issues. Subsidies do account for 76.6% of revenue at public institutions. Some believe that higher education does have the potential for generating its own revenue, and higher education institutions are becoming more and more dependent on their tuition revenue. A few things about state appropriations that I noticed throughout the readings is that they do cover operating expenses and capital expenses, but not completely. State universities get enough to cover a portion of their operating expenses and a majority of their capital expenses. The issue with state appropriations and the private endowments is that they're highly volatile and they're unpredictable. So this tends to affect tuition, but it also affects stocks and bonds, in that sense. So the next topic I would like to talk about is tuition policy. Tuition policy is determined in a number of ways, and it does vary by higher education institution, but it is determined by the cost of education per student, subsidies that institution receives per student, the average institutionally funded grant per student, and the average student grants funded by external sources. Overall, higher education is highly subsidized, and so that means that whatever the price of tuition does not completely cover the cost of education. And this leads to fees. There are two types of fees. There are mandatory fees that all students pay. For example, here at UNCW, all students pay a recreation fee to use the Student Recreation Center. That would be an example of mandatory fee. Another fee is the elective fee. Not all students pay this. This is based on the program. And for example, nursing students may pay a lab fee or any other fee like that. So this leads us to discounts. Discounts are issued to students sometimes on an individual basis. Higher education institutions rarely collect tuition at their full list price due to these discounts, also to grants, scholarships, and tuition waivers. Some of the readings have highlighted kind of a warning on making sure that discounts are managed effectively, because they can lead to inefficiencies in revenue, and the benefits of the discounts can diminish after a certain rate. The other issue with discounts is that tends to force certain programs at an institution to clash. Their objectives may clash. However, but if they work together and have effective enrollment management, they can maximize tuition revenue. And one thing that this leads me to that I really did not think too much about until going through these readings is the idea of enrollment management. Effective enrollment management is the balance between academic profile, tuition revenue, and access. Unbalanced enrollment management can lead to limited access, mostly to low-income families. It can lead to entrepreneurial behavior by the university, which could lead to additional fees. So the additional fees, I would like to talk about for a second and use the example from the article Course Load, The Growing Burden of College Fees, Georgia's Public Colleges, and I think this has a good sense of where fees came from and possibly where they're going, because at the Georgia Public Colleges, according to the article, fees go straight to the general fund, which is exactly where tuition goes. And where these fees came from was due to economic factors. When state funding was slashed, the colleges couldn't raise tuition on their incoming students, because that would break their promise. So instead they imposed some additional fees that were supposed to be temporary. However, they instead of decreasing, they've been increasing over time. So the general sense is that I got from the readings for this week is that tuition fees, discounts, enrollment management, subsidies, they're all related, obviously, and one does affect the other. Decrease in subsidies leads to an increase in tuition. Higher education institutions try their best not to raise tuition, so instead they raise fees or add fees. And to control enrollment management, they use discounts that should be checked fairly often. Tuition revenue needs to be created in other ways in the view of these institutions, and many are seeking out additional revenue sources, like one of the readings concentrating on non-resident student enrollment, which we have seen that as non-resident student enrollment rises, low-income student enrollment tends to decrease. So universities seek out alternative and additional sources such as fees, and universities use unfunded discounts to generate net tuition. And again, these are all connected. So I hope you enjoyed this screencast. I apologize it's not in line with my Prezi, but I will be posting it shortly. Thank you.